Raphael and Michelangelo, two of the three greatest artists of this era, along with Leonardo, Raphael and Michelangelo were rivals, both linked to the patronage of Pope Julius II. Here we see Raphael's Stanza della Segnatura, also in the Vatican, as was the Sistine Chapel in Rome. This room was considered the ideal setting for papal activities. These murals proclaim that all human knowledge exists under the power of divine wisdom, this being the Vatican. It's organized like a library with pictorial allusions, allegories to illustrate each important theme. And the luminaries behind the creation of these important individual bodies of knowledge that include theology, poetry, philosophy, and law. When we think about the way that important figures, luminaries as I referred to them, in our day and age, celebrities are depicted, I think of the figures, the anonymous figures here in the painter Vincent Desiderio's large-scale horizontal painting, and how in the image below we see this image directly picked up, lifted by Kanye West. I'm not equating, per se, Desiderio's lineup of naked bodies in bed with Raphael's Stanza della Segnatura. I'm just pointing out the difference in terms of what we honor and choose to highlight in a given age. And in Kanye West's depiction, we have a number of celebrities, let's call them, and personages of the age. Rihanna, Taylor Swift, Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, George Bush, and Donald Trump are all shown in this image below. Here we have a front to back, no pun intended, of Kanye West's, as you can see, rather literal lifting, I would say probably about 20 years after Vincent Desiderio painted the image on the bottom. Another example of appropriation here that we looked at in week 1, Andy Warhol's revisiting of the Last Supper scene, replete in a pop culture way with the iconic elements of corporate commodification. The idea of appropriation crops up again here in the Duchampian insertion of a mustache and beard and pencil on the Mona Lisa, and his changing in this ironic mock way of the Mona Lisa title. Leonardo's version of Vitruvian Man, a drawing of a man inside a circle and a square, explores the geometry of man in the universe. It's based on the teachings of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, and Leonardo's we've dated at 1490, sometimes attributed to a little earlier, 1487, 1490 for our purposes. And what Vitruvius conjectured was a very accurate description of a man's body fitting perfectly inside a circle, which is a divine symbol, and a square, which is the earthly symbol, divine versus earthly. It was intended as a geometric interpretation of the ancient belief that man is a microcosm of the whole universe. And this concept was revived during the Renaissance, 1500 years afterward. It's a sort of a human pinwheel. It has 4 arms and 4 legs, but it's not a freak. It's a diagram showing possible alternative positions for human limbs. And it's also designed to demonstrate how the human frame can be made to fit inside both of these geometrical conceits, the circle and the square, just as Vitruvius, the much earlier Roman architectural theorist, stated that they could. At a much later time, we see a more contemporary or modernist rendering of the idea, in a sense, of Vitruvian man, although this is more of a split figure, by the artist Marc Chagall. In 15th, going into 16th century Italy, the circle was considered an ideal shape for church and town plans. Roman philosophers had associated the circle with divinity and the perfection of God, and this also demonstrated their interest in the recurrence of round shapes in nature. And certainly that same fascination with the circle and with the philosophy of the first century Roman architect Vitruvius influenced Da Vinci's, Leonardo's, Vitruvian Man. Vitruvius's treatise on De Architectura, about architecture, emphasized the importance of symmetry and the circle in architecture and the way it related to concepts of architectural harmony and human balance. And he thought that with symmetry, a structure such as a temple would reflect and relate to the parts found in a human body. Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, his drawing, pen and ink drawing, demonstrates that, as Vitruvius thought, if a man extends his four limbs so that the hands and feet touch the circumference of a circle, his navel will fall in the exact center of the circle. This seems a very simple concept, but it was illustrated in a way that resonated in its time in Leonardo's drawing. In addition to illustrating that fact, it also includes Leonardo's version, a square within the circle whose sides are touched by the head, feet, and arms. And what Leonardo is getting at with this is that he's promoting and suggesting a connection between the body and architecture, as well as demonstrating this idea of the perfection of the circle as connected to the human form, which was Vitruvius's original concept.